Great that everybody was able to join. Welcome. My name is Julia De Bernardini, and I'm part of the management team for the GIM, the Joint Impact Model Foundation. And I'm really happy to be hosting our very first GIM Impact Forum, where we've invited members to join and actually tell from their side how is it that they're using the GIM and how is it that they are leveraging the tool that we've made available to them as members. And so who do we have today with us? We have Marcelo Delgado. He's the ENS Credit Risk Coordinator at Produbanco. And he's joined by his colleague, Denise Gonzalez, Climate Change Specialist. We also have from Symbiotics, Anne Rosales. She's the ESG and Impact Specialist. And we also have Rene van Stralen. He's the Senior Impact Officer at FMO. So we'll be hearing directly from them how it is that they're using the GIM, for what purposes. And the way that we want to structure this forum is that we'll have them talk about how they're using the GIM internally. And then we'll open it up for Q&A so that you, the members, can ask questions to directly to Produbanco, Symbiotics, and FMO. So during the time that they're presenting, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and then we'll make sure to ask them those questions directly during this webinar. So let's go to the next slide. Before I do that, for those of you who are new to the GIM, I wanted to give you a very brief overview of what it is that we do and how we try to help financial institutions. So the GIM was established, the GIM Foundation was established in May of 2022, but actually we've been working on this tool since 2019, where several DFIs got together and said, hey, let's share one tool, one methodology for all of the estimations and modeling that we have to do for jobs, contribution to GDP, and greenhouse gas emissions. And that's why the non-for-profit GIM Foundation was set up to be able to provide this tool at low cost to the different DFIs. And then it expanded from there, that we said, okay, let's make it available to more than just the EDFIs. Let's go further. Let's go for anybody who is interested in using the tool should be able to get access to it. And so our mission is to provide the means to quantify this impact aligned with regulation and industry standards. As many of you know, there's a lot of regulation coming our way, and it's always very helpful to speak with our peers on how to handle that regulation as best as possible, especially when it comes to the financial sector in developing countries where data is scarce. And we are striving for an inclusive, aligned, actionable financial sector so that we can help shift towards impactful investments and sustainable economic development while decarbonizing portfolios. So if we go to the next slide. The GIM helps with different areas for members. It enables the disclosure of principal impacts. So that being indirect jobs, contribution to GDP, and GHG emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3. And we try to put the best-in-class research available into this tool. And this allows everybody to use a harmonized approach. It eliminates the need to build your own systems. So everything that has already been built has been put into the GIM and then updated, of course. And then we, as a GIM Foundation, try to create credible governance over the development of the GIM. And this also, over time, would reduce the data collection burden because there's more alignment in the industry on what type of data points are required for modeling purposes. And so if we go to the next slide. If you become a member, you get full access to the GIM and all its features. You get personalized training You get to join a community of practitioners. You can participate in quarterly calls. We can participate in focus groups. So we've already had several members reaching out and saying that, you know, there are things on the wish list for the gym to develop next. So we take those items very seriously, and we try to work on them as best as possible. And we always happy to disseminate regulatory insights whenever possible. So with that being said, I will hand it over to our first presenters. I'll hand it over to Denise and Marcelo, as they're the first ones that will be presenting today during the Impact Forum. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcelo Delgado. As Julia said, I'm the Environmental Social Credit Risk Coordinator at Produbanco, and I'll be sharing this presentation with Denise, that is our climate change specialist. Help me with the next slide, please. So, another click, thank you. Thinking about I would like to give you a quick overview about Produbanco's strategy towards sustainability. So sustainability is part of the bank's core strategy, and we have four main pillars. The first one is the sustainable DNA that is related to our internal ESG commitment. Produbanco, we are carbon neutral through our operations, and we also have three of our main buildings certified as with EDGE certification. Other of our pillar is risk management, that is related to the management of the environmental, social, and climate risk of the operation and the portfolio. In this pillar, we're strongly working with the ESRAs, and we are also strongly working in everything related to physical and transition and climate risk. Also, value for our customers is something really important for the bank, that is accompanying our client on its path to sustainability through a sustainable offer, and building community, promote the development of a sustainable ecosystem in the country. And with that, we're working with the Bank Association here in Ecuador, and this presentation is part of our commitment to build this type of community in the country and also in other parts of the world. As probably you know, Produbanco is part of Grupo Promerica. They have other banks in the region, especially in Central America. Some of our standards we are part of the SDGs commitment. We were the first bank in Latin America to be certified as a B Corp, and we were signatory. We were part of the funding signatories of the Principles for Responsible Banking and also for the Net Zero Banking Alliance. Next slide, please. So, talking about the Net Zero Banking Alliance, we've been working with this about probably more than 2 or 3 years, and we have different technical assistance to develop our strategy, to calculate our emissions. But we have two main principles for this strategy and what Produbanco thinks of the Net Zero Banking Alliance. The first is that it's a change in the way that we do business, but we have two main principles. The first one is that everyone in the bank needs to know that every dollar in exposure needs to have a representation in terms of tons of CO2 equivalents. So, for example, in our credit committee, when we present the case, the credit committee knows the exposure in terms of money that we are approving, but they also know the exposure in terms of tons of CO2. So that's something we're currently strongly working on, to everybody to develop this mentality, know that every dollar needs to have a representation in terms of CO2 emissions. And also, back in the days, we have a strong portfolio in everything related to green lines, but right now, at the beginning, These green lines were ideas of our clients that were financed by Produbanco. Right now, we would like to have a proactive management commitment. So what we would like now to do is that our business team go to our clients and they can advise them in what will be the best idea to decarbonize their activities or their productive activities. Next slide, please. As I already mentioned, we are carbon neutral through our operations. Just to give you a quick overview, the scope 1 of Produbanco is around 439 tons of CO2. The scope 2 is 1,181 tons of CO2. The scope 3 is 3,273 tons of CO2. And we have this category 15 in the scope 3 emissions that is related to the portfolio or the investments we have. And currently we are quantifying 508,222 tons of CO2. And this is just, I'm saying that we are currently quantifying this because our approach through our calculation is that we are start thinking first of the calculation of the commercial portfolio, and after we are currently start working on the calculation of the vehicle loans portfolio, the mortgage portfolio, and we start thinking about, for example, credit card portfolio and other exposures, for example, in people's and in consumers' portfolio. So with this, my idea was to give you a quick overview, but Denise, that is going to share this presentation, the next slide with you, she's on daily basis working on this and daily working with Jim just to have the best quantification of our portfolio emissions. So Denise, please. Thank you.
Next slide. Okay, well, and why Jim? That is a really important question, and I would like to mention the 5 most important reasons to us. First, local emissions factors. Emissions factors have been fundamental data in developing emissions inventories. We were working with emissions factors at a regional level, in our case, Latin America, but emissions factors used with the GIM based on GTAP, we were able to obtain more specific data at a local level. As a result, we reduce uncertainty and improve the quantification of our portfolio's emissions. Then technical advisory, technical support of the GIMS team has facilitated the use of the calculation tool and also the interpretation of the results. Also, calculation automation. Previously, we developed like a spreadsheet based on PCAF to quantify the emissions of our portfolio. This process was not so simple, firstly because it required a deep knowledge of the methodology, and secondly, because of the large amount of data that is handled. With the GIM, this has been significantly simplified since now we only require uploading our client data and the platform is in charge of carrying out all the calculations for us. In relation to this, also, we have the reduction of human errors that may occur due to the application of formulas in the spreadsheets. And finally, although our main reason for using the GIM was to improve the quantification of our emissions, the GIM also provides us the information related to employment and the contribution to GDP, which allows us to expand the analysis of our portfolio. Next, please. Well, and now I'm going to present to you the result that we have obtained with the GIM related to the emissions of our portfolio regarding 2022. For this data, For this, data from SME and corporate companies was considered, and we obtained a total of 508,000 tons of CO2 equivalent, considering scope 1 and 2 emissions. As we can see in the following graph, of these emissions, the 65% correspond to corporate and the 35% to SMEs. And next. Okay.
Yeah, just one thing I would like to, I forgot to mention is that we were part of the core group that developed the worldwide methodology for PCAP. So we've been working with this probably around 5 or more years. And working with Jim was really relevant, especially because of the reasons that Denise mentioned. And we're really happy working and with the results we obtained with this last quantification. Thank you, Julia. That would be it for our part.
Thank you very much. I think that we've been having some technical issues, but I do believe it's been resolved, so that's great. So I think some people might have missed the first part, but for anybody that has questions for Denise and for Marcelo, please put them in the chat, and then I can take those questions and ask them. So that's how we want to structure this this impact forum. While people are thinking of questions, if they have any for you, I was wondering if you could, either Marcelo or Denise, if you could talk a little bit about how is the landscape of, reporting and regulation around GHG emissions, how is that evolving in Ecuador, in Latin America? If you could share a little bit about the landscape in general, what you're seeing, some of the trends and some of the requirements that are popping up and making this emissions accounting so relevant.
Well, Produbanco is part of Grupo Promerica, and we have other banks in Central America, especially, for example, in Panama. The regulatory it's kind of more strict, and they are actually requiring banks to have the emissions quantification, and also they are requiring them to have a stress test analysis of the climate stress test analysis of the criteria of their portfolio. So as a group level is really important for us because it's a trend. So right now the regulatory of Ecuador is start thinking and start asking questions about this. So I think probably in this year or maximum the next year we're going to have a specifically a regulation about this. But in the case of Produbanco, it's really about our commitment towards sustainability. So as I mentioned, we start working, thinking about the quantification of the portfolio of emissions about 5 years ago, where in Latin America, especially, nobody was talking about emissions or anything like that. So it's really part of our commitment or our strategy towards sustainability.
Okay, thank you so much, Marcelo. We have a question from Alexis Ruales, which I think is a really good question, and he is asking, what is would you recommend the GIM for a bank that's just starting to delve into portfolio impact assessment? Because I think that Denise, you mentioned that in order to do some carbon accounting previously, with the PCAP database, for example, a deep knowledge of the methodology was required in order to be able to do it. So I think that's really relevant for those banks. You guys are very advanced, but for those banks that are just now starting in their journey, would you recommend the GIM, if you can put yourselves in those shoes?
Yes, totally. Yes, as you said, we started with a PCAP methodology, And for us, it was like easy the change from pickup to gym. But I think that it is the best idea to use the gym because you will not to focus in the methodology, in the calculations. You only have to search for the information and then upload it into the platform. So it is really easy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think there's a lot of questions that are being asked of you guys. So I think that you guys have sparked a lot of interesting discussion. I think that Mariela had a question about integrating the portfolio breakdown. I think that is what you do. So what we're seeing here is actually you're not just entering the separation between corporate or SME, but from what I've seen Produbanco doing, they do enter their data separated by sector breakdown. So I hope that that's clear. And I think that we'll take one more question for the theory of change. This question is from Victoria. They want to know, do you create a theory of change for all your investments in order to define relevant KPIs? And if yes, how does it connect and align with the GYM model? And so, yeah, Produbanco has a lot of investments, of course. So I think that has to be taken into account when answering this question. But because some investors might have less investments, so creating KPIs for each investment might be easier. But please, if you could, Denise or Marcelo, answer this question. And I think after that, we'll have to move on to the next presenter.
Yeah, well, we're currently working on that. We have some KPIs, but are really in a big level, and we would like to have more specific KPIs, and that's something we're currently working. And something that I always share in this type of presentation and forum is that banks that are part of, for example, the Net Zero Banking Alliance of Principles for Responsible Banking, we've been thinking, talking, and working a lot about calculations and about target setting from probably more than 2 or 3 years. So it's really, we're really happy that we are finally started working on transition plans, and not only for our clients but for Produbanco. And having this information, for example, related to the missions of our clients, it really helps our strategy and talking with our clients, because right now what we would like to do is not stop working on quantification of emissions, but start giving more time or priority to this transition plans and how we can help our clients and going through this carbonization strategy and decarbonize their activities, go through this sustainability path that Produbanco, as I already mentioned, we have taken, and we already have our building certified, our net zero, our carbon neutral certification. So that's something we're currently working, and we'll be happy probably to share more information in our website probably in 2 or 3 months.
Great. Very nice. Thank you so much, Marcel and Denise. That was really, really fruitful. I think that what we'll do, since we had so many questions for you guys, we'll try to put those together. We'll see if we can get them answered and then shared with all the participants after the meeting. And now I'd like to shift over to Anne Rosales from Symbiotics. So Anne, please take it away.
Thanks a lot, Julia. So hi, everyone. Very happy to share a bit of our journey through the SFDR and with the great support of the GYM on this difficult regulatory framework. I think we can skip 2 slides already. Okay, so the SFDR came actually quite at a good timing for Symbiotics, because we were just working on our ESG rating and we realized we needed to enhance a bit of scope, because we were checking the risk of doing harm of our investees So, claim protection, staff care, etc. But we realized that the indirect risk was also something that needed to be assessed properly. So we decided to go further at direct and indirect level, and we had quite some challenges. We were thinking how we will be able to measure this risk of doing harm to the environment and the communities from the end borrowers. We realized that we would need to enhance our portfolio breakdown by sector. And we had some important questions. How can micro entrepreneurs actually do harm to ENS, or is it only at SME level? So we were stuck with plenty of questions, and the last one it was actually to me, that was the most difficult one to be addressed. How are we going to obtain proxy for GHG emissions of all of our investees? So we made the choice to go up to the level of end borrowers. So we know some of our competitors, other MIVs, preferred only to contemplate investee GHG emissions. But in our case, since we have quite a high number of SMEs, that's roughly 34% of the money we've invested, we consider that we need to be transparent enough to our investors, and thus we need to go to this level of assessment. So the first step was to increase our list of end borrowers' activities. So we finance institutions, but in their turn, they finance end borrowers. And those end borrowers could be into agriculture or high-risk activities like mining, or medium-risk activities like textile, etc. So we worked on a more developed list of activities. And for this, I'm happy to share with you it's quite simple. We just took the IFC First for Sustainability approach. They've listed close to 30 sectors that could do harm at the level of an SME. And they even give us an insight on what type of harm they could do, either excessive consumption of energy, of water, or pollution, etc. So as we did this work of asking our investors to provide more information on their portfolio breakdown, we realized we were ready to work with the GIM, because the GIM needs this kind of input, right? What is the end borrowers' activities? Is it agriculture? Is it industry, and which type of industry, and etc. So during all this long thinking process, we've been in very frequent contact with the GIM, and we really appreciated all this brainstorming time we had. They were looking into solutions in emerging economies, so that was exactly what we needed. And then on some other pies, we calculate them ourselves. So we use the GIM for pie 1 and 2 and 3, but for other, we have built our own proxy indicators. And to answer this question, do micro-entrepreneurs provoke some negative impact to ENS? So we believe, and this was confirmed during several conferences by MF environmental specialists, that they do little harm, if not harm at all. There are still exceptions like deforestation, but still it's really on the SMEs that the harm could be more severe. So on the next slide, so to share a little bit more about our user experience on the GIM. So the GIM allows us to report on to me, the most difficult ones, the PI 1, 2, and 3, the GHG emissions. So as said, we have decided to go up to the scope 3 level. So as an investor, investee plus end borrowers level. We have appreciated, as said earlier, the constant communication with the team of the GIM. We've challenged them on some strange results we had found on India, for instance. We are still challenging also them on the fact that to us, the footprint from a micro entrepreneur is the magnitude is much lower than if it is an SME. And also to mention that we had an interesting working group at the SPTF where we tried with all other MIVs to share our understanding of the regulatory framework. And also we could compare with several users of the GIM what outcome was obtained on a certain investee, so that we could check if it was comparable and thus could have credibility. So in the future, we would like to take this micro-entrepreneurial effect into account. We also hope that the GHG emissions output will be stable and comparable from one year to another. And for now, the input-output practice is quite easy for the user. But of course, if an API could be implemented, that would be absolutely beautiful. And soon enough, I'm confident that we will be, because it remains proxy, but if we could use that at investee level and then monitor that footprint, I think that would be really interesting, because we wouldn't be only achieving a regulatory requirement, we would be also monitoring our scope 3 emissions. And I think that would be really interesting. So that's all for my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Anne. Really interesting. And I think that we do have some questions coming into the chat. And I see that Josefina is also answering them as they come in. So I think that's
Josefina.
great.
Josefina is actually our user of the gym. So she does all the input, output, Excel reformulation and on. So she's the expert on this.
Yes, indeed. So one of the questions that I had just to kick off some of the Q&A is a little bit similar to what we asked Produbanco about the landscape in Ecuador. Since you are working mostly from a different point of view, you're the asset managers in Europe. How do you see the landscape of regulation, impact measurement evolving in Europe?
Okay.
Yeah, and when it comes to this this particular topic, we have the pies, of course.
Yeah.
Where do you see it going?
Okay, so on this, I really loved I think the chairman of Schroeder's made a beautiful comparison and very fair. She said that what the EU is asking us is like somebody selling Apple to be fully transparent on the harm that this Apple could do and the positive impact that this Apple could do. And at the same time, nothing is asked to the ones that are selling cigarettes. But I think it was a beautiful comparison. So we believe it's pretty tough for MIV. So we are specialized in micro enterprise funding. So we are not the ones that are expected to do the biggest harm. I believe still that it has been a very interesting exercise to go further in the possible negative impact that our end borrowers could do. So we don't know where the regulation would go. Maybe it would be lighter because of this unfair system of apples and cigarettes I've just mentioned. But I can see that outside of the regulation, even private investors are really looking into CO2 reduction. So if you want to measure CO2 reduction, you need also to check your CO2 emissions so that you can monitor your footprint. So beyond regulation, maybe those impacts, negative and positive impact measurement or requirements are still very useful in my views. But let's see what happens. Just for you to know, at SPTF, there is a working group that has provided an extensive feedback to the European Commission on SFDR 9 for MIVs. So let's see what comes out of this discussion.
Thank you. It's really interesting. I think it's super interesting to hear first from Produbanco what their needs are, and then to hear from you guys at Symbiotics what your needs are. And even though they're coming from, let's say, different perspectives, at the end of the day, it's very similar. What you actually need, which is the understanding what are the emissions of your portfolio. And I think it's really really interesting that you're also going all the way to scope 3, right? Because for some investors applying the pies, they might decide, okay, we will just do scope 1 and 2. But then you're also including your scope 3, which I think is really telling because it talks about the portfolio of your investments. So I see that there are more questions in the chat. But what we'll do is we'll do the same thing that we did for Produbanco, which is to ask the questions, have you maybe answer the questions afterwards. At the same time, I also wanted to highlight that if anybody's interested in doing a demo with the gym, we have a link in the chat, so you can sign up, and then we can provide you with a free trial of the gym. So please sign up, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you. It's the Calendly link that was sent. Okay, so thank you so much, Anne. We'll now hand it over to Renee. Renee, please take it away.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for having me and giving the opportunity to showcase how we use the gym. I know there's also looking at the other presentation that maybe I exaggerated in the number of slides, but I'll try to keep it fast so we also have time for questions afterwards. So like if you can maybe, yeah, this is what I wanted to discuss. So a little bit introduction, how we do the data collection, how we use the data, the impact data. And I think just mention, I think it's very important to mention that we always use the PCAF attribution. I won't go into that in further detail in the presentation, just sake of time, but I think it's very important to mention that. Lion, maybe if you can show this video of the data collection. I think it shows very nice kind of the data life cycle within FMO. So that's why I wanted to share with you.
We strongly believe that collecting impact data is of utmost importance. We need data to monitor FMO's progress against our Pioneer Develop Scale strategy, substantiate impact claims, and to comply with regulation. We collect data like greenhouse gas emissions, land use and access to renewable energy to substantiate our commitment to climate action and comply with climate regulation. Employment and people reached to substantiate our commitment to sustainable and inclusive economic development and reduced inequalities. Data on the share of female management and loans to women-owned SMEs demonstrates our commitment to increase gender lens investments. How we collect, verify, and aggregate data is organized in 5 key steps. 1. Investment teams select the indicators that best describe the customer's impact at financial proposal stage in SIS. 2. The indicators are included in the contract. 3. Data is sent by customers annually and submitted by investment teams via impact cards in SIS. This is validated by the Impact Measurement and Integrated Reporting Team. 4. The Impact Measurement and Integrated Reporting Team aggregates the data across the portfolio. 5. The data is reported to regulators and stakeholders and shared within our organization. Impact data helps us to better understand our portfolio, steer towards impact-related targets, inform our strategy, and extract learnings. For more information, please contact us.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm also part of this division, so the impact measurement, the integrated reporting. So we are really about processing all the data. So we don't do the data collection part, but we do verify the quality of the data and also verify. There was a question on the theory of change, for example, in the investment. So here, when doing the financial proposal to a different investment, they do select the indicators that fit the best of in this investment, and we also review those. And then our front office, then they actually do the data collection part, so requesting the data directly from the customers, and we validate, and then we process the data. In the processing also, we enrich our data with using the GIM, and then we report. Like if you can jump 2 slides. So I think, yeah, here I discussed, maybe you showed most already in the video, but this aggregation of data that we collect, we call the impact card. and it's both financial and also the impact data, so the non-financial part. And the financial is we collect as well on the impact card because it's everything related to what we use in the gym. So we are collecting the revenues to be able to estimate the impact in the gym, but also the attribution. So we collect the total asset, total equity, total debt, also corporate tax, for example, also the optional inputs. If they are available, we do collect them, and we aggregate this all in the impact card, and it's stored in what we call the sustainable information system. I just wanted to quickly show you how that looks like. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, but like if you go to the next slide, this is how kind of the SIS looks for us. So this is a collection, for example, of the customer level in the economic indicator. So here we have the total asset, total debt, equity, etc. The next slide we see, for example, the environmental and the social. I think I used a very bad example because here this client didn't report any absolute emissions, scope 1, but we do have clients that do report that, and I think that is in our ideal world, that we are not using the gym to estimate, but that the clients are using the gym to estimate their emissions and report it back to us, because the clients will always have more updated data. They have further breakdowns than we have. So, but if you go the next slide, here's, for example, this specific client is a financial institution. So then here's just to show that we also collect the portfolio breakdown to be able to do the finance enabling impact of this client. Next one. Yeah, so we collect both on a customer level, but when we are talking about investment funds, we also collect data on an investee level. We do have a threshold there, so if the fund has more than 25 investee, then we aggregate it on the fund level, but if it's less than 25 investee, we really have data on an investee level. And as we see for the direct employment, our coverage is quite good. So we have 87% coverage for the customers and 84% for the investees. So I think the added value of GIM is to fill this final gap here for us. But when we are talking about the other impact indicators that the GIM estimates, so indirect employment, we don't have any coverage. Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, you see our coverage are significant lower, and of course expected, but here you see really the added value of the GIM for FMO, and to be able to report and don't actually underreport our financed emissions. So we really, this is, yeah, the core use of the GIM for us is to basically fill the gaps and estimate both the supported direct and indirect jobs and GHG emissions when we don't have the primary data. Laia, if you can go to the next. Yeah, another one. So this is just showing some of the reports we use. So we have the SIS, which is kind of where the platform where we have all the sustainability information data. We enhance it with the joint impact model, and then we are able to do internal reporting. So we collect that in Click, but also more importantly, the external reporting. So these are a list of all the external reporting that use GIM data. So we talk about our annual report, the interim, but also the investment manager side of FMO, also for the public investment reports, all the reports to the government, for example, they do use or jobs or emissions or both. So it is definitely that we would, without the GIM, we wouldn't be able to report so much that we are currently able to do so. And of course, that's FDR, the EDFI, and also for some benchmarking purposes. I'll show you one example later. But just in the next slide, just an example how we would report it in our annual report. Unfortunately, I cannot share the latest annual report because it's going to be published on Friday. So this is the one of 2022. But here we are reporting the direct jobs and indirect jobs, also the scope 1 and 2 and 3. And also in the narrative of the annual report, we even do further breakdowns. So for the job supported, we use all the breakdowns available in the GIM. So the direct, but also all the different indirect breakdowns. And for the GHG emissions as well, here the difference is that the scope 3 investment is then the collection of all the finance enabling emissions. So also finance enabling scope 1, 2, and 3 are in this scope 3 investment. So this is how we use estimated data from the GIM in the annual report. And in the next example, you see that was in the benchmarking live. You can go to the next slide. It's also proud moment for us that we were classified as Paris aligned by the E3G benchmarking, and that has all to do that we have this climate action plan, also with a net zero commitment as Produbanco, and other commitments that we do here, but I think the more important is the net zero we wouldn't be able to do without the GIM, because here again we are looking at all the scope 1, 2, and 3, and also basically how we're gonna offset that with investment in forestry, for example, and also then we have to estimate using both the GIM model. So all this is possible by using the GIM. So and then I had some slide on attribution, but I think it's more important that everyone knows that FMO is always using attribution, so you can understand that our numbers maybe look smaller than other DFIs, but because we always do the PCAF attribution, so you can skip those slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Yeah, I think it's interesting for those.
Sorry,
sorry.
Julia, just to add, indeed, there's my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you want, and also added some useful links.
Thank you so much, Renee. Feel free to also put the links in the chat because I think that people can't click on them via the slides. Thank you so much. And also, Renee, I wanted to quickly mention that the importance of why you mentioned attribution and that you use the PCAF standard is because while many of you that are using the GIM for SFDR purposes is automatically attributed because of the regulation. So that's one thing. The other thing is that for example, Produbanco and the other financial institutions applying the PCAF standard, that also means that you're by definition attributing. But what makes it very interesting also is that FMO is applying attribution, that same PCAF methodology to jobs, which is not something that you see very often. But that will be my first question, is why did FMO choose to apply attribution to jobs when the attribution methodology is actually meant for GHG emissions, Renee?
Thank you. I think our takeaway is that I think also related to what Anna mentioned, that it's all about becoming more transparent about our positive and also negative impact. And I think the attribution is a way that we are also transparent about our positive, that we are not hyperinflating the positive impact. Look, we have so many millions and millions of jobs using that unattributed, but then when it comes to the more negative impact, then we use attribution, which would reduce basically the emissions by, I don't know, a factor of maybe 10 at least. So I think it's important that you're always transparent and consistent. So that's why FMO chose to always try to use the attribution when possible.
Okay, thank you for that, Renee. And I also had another follow-up question. In one of your slides where you're presenting the percentage of coverage for direct information,
Yeah.
maybe, Laia, you can go back a few slides. I think for this one, where you're talking about the coverage for scope 1, 2, and 3, and also for jobs, this does exclude the portfolio of financial institutions, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So here we're only talking about really the direct jobs or the direct emissions in the financials, but not the finance enabling. So I think that is always indeed the finance enabling. The portfolio part would always we need the gym to do that. But ideally, I think would be that a financial institution would use the gym because they have then a further breakdown than we have, because I think the most information that we have, maybe 90%, is based on the annual reports of the customers or based on public available information. So either way, we are always 1 year behind. And maybe we don't have all the breakdowns that the customer would have. So I think that is the ideal scenario, that actually the customer use the gym and then reports all the numbers to FMO. And I hope that yeah, we'll slowly, but we'll get there.
Yeah, so I think that this is a really interesting point, and why it's cool that the gym can be used from the investor level all the way down to, or I should say the DFI level all the way down to the asset manager, and also the financial institution, right? Because if for those who were able to see the Produbanco's presentation in the beginning, they mentioned that they had around 500,000 tons of CO2 emissions, scope 1 and 2, right? So then that information ideally would go to the asset manager, such as Symbiotics, if Symbiotics was working with Produbanco, and would go to FMO, if FMO was working with Produbanco, and then FMO would be able to say that actually this percentage would go up because it'd be more higher quality level data. And something that I also want to point everybody to, if you go back one slide, Laia. One more, where we see the CIS. No, back. Yeah. Not this one, but the one where we see the sector breakdown. So this one here, I think, is really interesting, because what you see here is you see a sector breakdown for a financial institution. And while I think that this is, really important information to have for a financial institution, what we've seen when we're working with financial institutions themselves is that they have a much further breakdown. They have all the way down to NACE level 4. And why is this so important? Is because, for example, certain sectors such as agri, they're going to have very different emissions. Yeah, they're going to have very, very different emission factor depending on what type of agri they're investing in, right? So that's why we think that it's so useful to have the financial institutions also using the GIM, because the quality of the data would increase significantly, or the granularity, I should say. And then it's also methodology that FMO would know, and it's also methodology that Symbiotics would know. So then you kind of get a huge improvement in the level of data. And also what we're seeing is that a lot of financial institutions also have the breakdown per sector for the different, whether it's SME or whether it's a large loan or a micro loan. And so with that type of information, you get more granularity about your results. And that's why we think that the GIM can really help with data collection burden, because then FMO wouldn't have to make these assumptions, for example, for a financial institution as such, which is already very good. I'm not saying, I'm saying, like, some institutions don't even do this. I think it's great that FMO is doing it, but how much better would it be if that information was coming from Produbanco directly or other financial institutions. I believe FMO has, around 500 financial institutions. Imagine doing this sector breakdown at a very high level for each of those financial institutions. It's a lot of work, and something that I hear being echoed by a lot of the other intermediaries and asset managers. So something to keep in mind. Let's see if there are
if I
other...
may, Julia, on this.
Yes, please.
So since it's indeed in our case, we ask investors to make this reporting to us. It's part of the annual reporting, and it is a burden indeed. So what we did once we designed the breakdown that we've adopted, we shared it with SPTF and Cerise in order to replicate the same breakdown with our peers, and in this way simplify the reporting burden of this, because we normally we have the same investees, and so we have adopted the same approach. So, and this approach is available on SPTF, Impact Investor Working Group. It's open knowledge, so that we should all have the same reporting breakdown.
Yes, I completely agree, but what I'm saying is that you could get even more granularity, because a lot of financial institutions, they have it all the way to NACE level 4, and sometimes that can be really quite critical to get a better accurate reading of what are the emissions, what are the actual emissions of a financial institution. So I think it's really important that you guys have aligned on that sector breakdown. That really helps a lot. But if we go even further, that is information that the FIs do have. They do have it at NACE level 4, ISIC level 4, and it can really make a big difference in the emissions, as what we've seen. Okay, so let's see. We have some more questions. There's a question about a life cycle assessment, but I will have to, since we only have a minute left, there are some slides that I had that I wanted to use for wrapping up, and then we'll wrap up the webinar. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions. Keep them coming, and we'll make sure to write them down and try to have them circulated. But for those who can still stick around, where do we want to go next with the GIM? We want to go beyond emission factors based on economic information, such as revenue and outstanding amounts. And we want to go into physical activity. So talking about kilograms of fertilizer, cement, steel, motor vehicle loans, this type of information we think is really important in order to be able to dive into the some of the engagements that have to happen with clients, because you can be at a very high level and say this is the average emissions based on your country and sector that you're operating in and the revenues that you have. But then the client might say, well, my activities are very different from the average. And that's where the physical activity tool can come in and can be very interesting for financial institutions to utilize. Not for everybody, because this is a lot of data collection, but for certain key clients, it can be used, and it can be very handy to understand better what actions can be taken. Another very important next step is the climate risk tool. So we want to make climate risk scanning and assessments available via the GIM. We would just be adding one more or two more information points, which would be region, or if you have the location of the asset itself, and then you would be able to get a climate risk assessment. And these two work streams are the ones that we've been hearing the loudest from the members. The members are really not just loudest, but also the number of members that are asking for this type of information. So that's why we're working hard on getting this into the GIM as well. So hopefully we can have that. We can have more information about the planning and the timelines for this soon, and we'll be sharing it with all the members. So please stay tuned for that. And then there are other areas, of course, that we're always keeping an eye out, such as transition risk, biodiversity, expansion in other areas. We know that we need to improve our current methodology for SMEs and for micro, for MFIs, for example. So this is definitely all on the radar. But these are the two things that we feel are most important to tackle in the short term, and also where we see data availability. So it's a combination of, is it needed, and do we have data, and that's why we're going to go there. Already going over time. If you can go to the next slide, I think that's everything that I had. Yes. So for those of you who are not members yet and are curious, please write to us at info.jointimpactmodel.org, or you can scan this barcode and become a member. And once again, I will be sharing the link in case you want a demo. So I just shared it again in the chat. Please click on it if you want a demo and you want to hear more. But that's everything for today. So thank you so much, Renee and Marcelo and Denise, for your time. Really amazing content. And yes, we'll keep in touch, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
Thanks